Good Friday morning, afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. We have another episode of Breaking into Cybersecurity Leadership Edition. And today we're with Brian Kissinger, who will be sharing his journey into cybersecurity leadership and understanding the role of AI into that. So, Brian, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Hey, thanks, Chris. Good morning, everyone. I'm Brian Kissinger. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for Trace3, which is a technology enablement and consulting company. And prior to that, I was the CISO at a number of large healthcare organizations. I came into cybersecurity by accident about 25 years ago. I was getting out of the Navy and I actually got picked up by a consulting firm and they taught me security and I went out and did it. I actually went to college and was a finance major. So I'm one of those on the job training guys who learned IT and security along the way, but did at one point go back to school and get some more education formally around IT and security.
So, walk us through that journey. So, you're a finance major, the military pulled you into this. How did you go about learning so that those that are watching can follow in your footsteps and potentially take some of the tips and tricks that you've learned along the way and apply it to their career?
Yeah, I think today there are actually a lot more options to be educated and learn the cybersecurity business. A couple of decades ago, and I know I'm dating myself now. You're probably like, "Who's this old guy?" But there wasn't a lot of online training. There weren't even a lot of books or certifications that you could get. It was really like learning on the job and learning from others. And so I did a lot of that. I self-educated where I could, and then I just was a sponge to go shadow and learn from others that had been doing it before me. I think today, people that are looking to get into cybersecurity, there are a lot of resources out there. I would highly encourage you to do things online while you're doing your normal job. When you're done with that job for the day or on the weekend, get out there and educate yourself on different technologies, different security domains, take certification courses, be a sponge, an avid and consistent learner. And you'll be surprised how much you can actually self educate. And then when you can get to that on the job training portion, you're actually pretty far down the road in terms of knowledge.
And in regards to on the job training and kind of fighting for that next role, what tips and tricks do you have for folks that are trying to do that and trying to take the bootstrap way?
Yeah, I would never say no. It's a mantra. You may get asked to do a job, and on the surface, it may not seem like it's your cup of tea. Everything that you do, you learn from. I've had folks that were non technical people, even at my existing company today, who wanted to become security practitioners. And I told them the same thing. I said, go out and get some books, go out and do some online courses, and then come over and start shadowing or interning with folks that are doing the job today. There's nothing wrong with doing your regular job and then spending some extra time shadowing or interning with others that are maybe doing the job that you aspire to have. That the gentleman I'm speaking about actually did that. And 6 months later, he was already out doing customer work because he had absorbed so much knowledge and was passionate about it that now it's been about a year and a half and he's a pretty seasoned consultant. So don't say no and be very active and passionate about wanting to learn from others.
And as the landscape is changing so quickly and evolving so quickly, what are some of the new domains that you would recommend people learn about or
Mhm.
potentially niche up in so that they could become a SME in that field and be the ones that the next generation looks to?
Yeah, I'll start on the traditional side. Offensive security, white hat hacking, always in demand. We're out hiring folks there, and we have so much business in that area that we actually have to contract with third parties just to help us keep up with demand. So if you want to be really technical and you enjoy being an ethical hacker, learn those skills and you'll have a job for life. We're also seeing a lot of interest in application security and secure development. Most organizations have some capacity to create applications or develop their own code, and those have to be secured. And if you're more on the coding side, if you learn how to do that in a secure way, you also see a lot in that career field. Maybe less technical, but around security assessments and what has to happen from a regulated or compliant need within an organization. Most companies are subject to different regulations and compliance requirements, and people who enjoy evaluating security controls, looking at assessing a company, looking for gaps and putting together roadmaps to mature security programs is also very in demand these days. Now, I couldn't probably get off of this podcast without talking about artificial intelligence, machine learning, automation. It's really cutting across all aspects of cybersecurity and IT for that matter. The more you can do around learning the fundamentals of AI, the more conversant you'll be. All security technologies these days are baking in AI. So understanding how AI is being used in those solutions and in corporate America is going to be very valuable.
All right, you've really touched on everything I've been doing, helping companies since I left my last corporate job around the assessments and creating security strategies, and then informing businesses on, hey, you already have shadow AI in your organization. If you don't come up with a solid plan on how to deal with AI and how to educate your stakeholders on the safe ways to use AI, you're just pushing everything under the rug and it will eventually come back to bite you. So, as the next generation is preparing for AI, how should they go about doing it? How should they go about learning it so they become those SMEs? Or maybe some are on the coding side, some are not, but how could they prepare themselves for that career?
I'd recommend sort of a two-pronged approach. First of all, there are a lot of resources out there. I myself subscribe to ChatGPT-4 and use it pretty much in my daily life. So go out there, get some of these tools, use them on your desktop, use them on your phone. There's no better education than actually using the tools themselves. If you're in a corporate environment, you might have access to Copilot for either GitHub or for Microsoft Office Suite. Use those tools. The more you use them, the more you become familiar with them, the more conversant you'll be with others about them. And then there is a lot of online education available out there. I don't want to name drop any specific schools, but I went to a school and participated in a 2-week course around AI, generative AI, and I learned a lot from it. But most technical colleges now are offering online education, and it's not expensive. You can go out and really up level your skill set, both from using it, but then getting the sort of book knowledge behind it by taking some of these courses and certifications.
So, with rollout of AI, I know there was a big push that, hey, you could gain efficiencies and potentially reduce headcounts.
Mhm.
I see that as potentially being dangerous because now you're automating something that you might not have the stakeholders to fully understand what's happening under the hood. So when something goes wrong, now it's a total catastrophe.
Mhm.
What's your point of view on that?
Yeah, it's a great point. Every conversation I've had about the positive and potentially negative impacts of AI in corporate environment, I talk about the need for human oversight. I do think some manual tasks and things that require a lot of manual process, manual intervention can be automated, and that's really the power of AI is increasing efficiency. I don't see that necessarily creating a lot of job loss. I think that you'll make a person in their job more efficient, and they can also focus on more strategic, more complex, more human-based problems. But I don't think we're at a maturity level with AI today where you can just trust the output. There's a lot of model training that's happening. For example, I'll just use a medical example. That's my background from healthcare. They're talking about how AI is going to be able to read radiology scans and make decisions and determine outcomes. That's probably true. And you might be able to become a more efficient radiologist using AI. But I don't want my medical diagnosis left up to a trained model. I want a doctor who's been looking at these things for years and can really provide that level of human oversight. So I think 5, 10 years down the road, maybe all of these models will be trained and they'll be very accurate, but the old computer adage of garbage in, garbage out still holds. And if the data going in is corrupt or it's poisoned in some way, you're going to get an outcome that really can't be trusted. So you need humans to be providing that level of oversight and governance.
Brian, you bring up an interesting point, which in regards to garbage in, garbage out, I don't think a lot of organizations have the maturity to potentially assess the models that you're using, the foundational models, or any refinement of that to see if there's things like bias in there that would prompt one way or another the output to change, as well as if there are hallucinations and things like that in the output, which is a challenge that I see in some of the courses that I teach online, students just trusting the output. And it might be okay for a SME like me and you to go look at the output. Yeah, we trust it. But for someone that has no knowledge in the field, blindly trust the output is frankly dangerous. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I heard a stat. I don't know if it's still accurate, but at one point somebody said it costs about $100 million to create your own AI model. So most organizations and certainly consumers are not building their own models. So what does that mean? We're all relying on the big companies that have developed these models and then are creating the output. So it's a black box for most of us. I guess what I would say is, like anything in cybersecurity, look at outputs with a healthy bit of skepticism. Just like when you get a phishing email, don't just click on it right away or believe what somebody's asking you to do. Apply a level of skepticism to it. Take a few seconds and say, does that really make sense? Given what I asked or the inputs that I provided, does that really all gel? I was playing around with ChatGPT to do some images, and despite me putting in all of the right inputs, it was coming out with images with misspellings in it. And I could not figure out why. So I just had to keep re-inputting in different ways, different prompts to get the image to come out the way that I wanted. So an image is an easy way to check something, right? You can look at it and say, boy, that doesn't look what I was expecting. But even if you're getting text-based output, you really have to just read it, almost be more skeptical about it than you would if something was just emailed to you, for example.
Yeah, that makes sense. So part of the theme in our conversation is the role of AI in strengthening cybersecurity. For you, what are some of the core areas that we can safely enable AI within an organization today or in the near future that would really help strengthen the cybersecurity posture? And what are the ripple effects of that?
Good news is that most cybersecurity solutions have been using automation, machine learning, and now AI for a number of years. So you probably are already benefiting from it. But anyone who has run a security operations center or has worked with a SIM platform knows that it requires a lot of ingest. You need data to make decisions around what's happening in an environment. And typically, and the way it used to work is that the more data you ingested, the more expensive that solution would be, and the more challenging it would be to arrive at a prioritized set of findings. The power of AI is that now you can almost ingest an unlimited amount of data, and the cost of ingesting that data has really dropped through the floor. You're able to make more informed decisions faster, more accurate because of the large amount of data that can be analyzed. You're actually being able to finally, I think, take user behavior analytics to another level. You're going to be able to get a lot more proactive. You may be able to head off an attack before it happens because you're looking at so many different data sources and you're doing it in a faster, more automated way. So I think that's the real plus. I think the ripple effect of that sort of technology and use of AI is that we are going to be able to hopefully get more proactive and less reactive around threat management, threat detection. And then the analysts and the people that have done that work are going to be able to be faster, smarter, and be able to take advantage of that technology and then focus their efforts on things that are more human decision making oriented.
And then as you look at the next wave of AI coming down, first, a lot of this is structured data. Do you see AI getting better in potentially identifying and helping us to control unstructured data? Like DLP has always been one of those icky areas where it's really hard to identify and control unstructured data. Do you think AI could help us in that field?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think that's future looking. I think that's happening today. Actually at our company, we're actually using a technology that does that. It goes out and classifies all of our unstructured data in the cloud and on premise and does it in an automated way and gives us really great reporting to say, hey, you have this amount of data that has intellectual property in it, or you have this amount of data that has employee information in it, and you can actually then make decisions around how you want to secure that data, whether you want it to be accessible by outside or third parties. So I think we're living in that today. Again, I'm not going to name drop solutions, but there are a number of data security posture management tools out there that are leveraging AI. And you're right, data loss prevention has been a thorn in everyone's side for a long time. It was very challenging to be able to look at a large environment that existed in file shares or SharePoint or outside of an application and be able to do anything with it. And just as I mentioned earlier, this is where AI and the ability to rapidly and accurately consume vast amounts of data and make decisions is really helping. We're living it today.
And with regards to better understanding the context of data, that's been a challenge before because you could have something that looks like PHI or something that looks like credit card information, but based on the context of something that is supposed to be shared, is something that's supposed to leave the organization. But previous solutions didn't fully understand context or individuals or the way it's being shared. Do you see that as potentially being more advanced today?
I think it's more advanced, but I'd say we probably have not arrived at that level of intelligence. Just harkening back on the tools that I'm familiar with and that we're using, vast amounts of data can be analyzed, but at the end of the day, there's still some decision making that needs to be made around how things have been classified. And to your point, is this 16-digit number that I found in a file, is that really a credit card number, or is that just something that maybe it's four customer last fours that have been bunched together? So I think that's where that human oversight, that's where that looking at the outputs and then providing intelligence back into the system. I think these systems will learn over time. But today, certainly that human element needs to be there to interject some intelligence around context.
Not now they used to in as a service all around. You mentioned ChatGPT and other public models. Do you see organizations being able to easily control their stakeholders' access to these open AIs, or what do we need to do to educate the workforce on the pros and cons of using AI with or without company data and how it could still potentially be attached to a profile or your cell, even though you're trying to be anonymous with it?
Yeah. It's one of the biggest challenges organizations are dealing with right now. They are worried about employee access into free tools and then using them to access intellectual property or sensitive information. So I think that the way we have to do it as corporate IT leaders and cybersecurity leaders is we have to provide the guidelines. We created an acceptable use policy at my company around these different generative AI tools, and you hope that you have good employees that are diligent and that are going to follow the rules and the guidelines. See, my dogs are back here. All right. And then we're starting to see now organizations have centers of excellence, governance teams that are evaluating all of that and how it works in the environment. Now, beyond that, the next level is protecting ourselves from ourselves. And so more and more tools are coming out that are going to actually help put security controls around the generative AI solutions so that if I try to a customer file into a chat GBT4 engine, it'll actually prevent me from doing that because that file or that information's been flagged. So it's a combination of making sure that we are providing awareness and training to our employees. We're providing guidance, and then we're going to have to put those controls in place.
And thinking of those controls in place, do you see the shared responsibility model of using as a service, AI as a service, anything else as a service, being properly understood by stakeholders and potentially how that is even more important when you're using AI as a service and you don't understand how the data is flowing?
I'd say it's a work in progress, to be honest with you. I think I see a couple of different camps. I see people that are IT enthusiasts and they just embrace this technology and they love it and they understand those relationships and the level of responsibility that both parties have. There are people on the opposite side of the spectrum that are afraid of this technology and they're just not going to dip their toe in the water yet. So they just stay away from it. And then you've got everybody else in the middle who's, oh yeah, I dabble with it, or I maybe had a plug-in for PowerPoint. It helped me create a cool looking slide. Not a lot of risk there, but I think it's more that casual user that needs the most training and awareness because they're more likely to do something accidentally with sensitive data. And this is not a new problem. The most dangerous thing in a corporate environment has always been the accidental insider. Most of the time, breaches happen honestly by people doing something by mistake. The number of brute force attacks that are successful getting into companies and stealing data, they happen obviously, but it's usually somebody on the inside who had access to something already making a mistake. And so these tools are just creating more opportunities to make mistakes.
We've covered quite a bit today from your career, getting into IT, getting into cybersecurity, and getting into AI. What final tips would you have for anyone looking to grow into a leader within the space today? And what are some of the things that you would recommend that they do?
Yeah, I'll just go back to what I said earlier is I would be an avid self-learner. Nobody is going to come to you in an organization and say, "Hey, let me train you on this. Let me train you on that." People, especially kids coming out of college, they may think that they're going to join a company and then they're going to have all this experience heaped upon them. You'll be the most successful if you take responsibility for your career, and that means training yourself, going out and learning, being an avid learner and being passionate, and then looking for those opportunities where you can shadow or work alongside someone that's more experienced. You need to do that as an individual. As a corporate leader, I like to think I'm a good people person and I care about everybody I work with, and I do. But nobody has enough time in the day to say, "Hey, how is Sally learning today?" or "How is Jimmy becoming more proficient in this security domain?" You have to do that and take responsibility for it. And people will notice that and you'll rise up through the ranks.
And then any last tip for organizations looking to dip their foot into AI to enable their business mission?
Yeah, I'd say don't feel pressured to use it. I know that there are boards of directors out there and others that say, do something with AI, just do something, right? But as security practitioners, we want to do that in a measured way. So, what I would say is look for specific use cases where you think AI can help you, and then roll that use case out in with a select number of individuals and help them to explore the functionalities and positive aspects of it while minimizing the risk and anything negative. And once you've piloted a solution, maybe in a department or with a select group of individuals, you'll learn a lot through using that tool. I know when we first plugged in some solutions at our company, we found that we were able to navigate to inboxes and find all kinds of information. And so we went back then and secured some things so that when we rolled it out to a broader audience, we weren't going to have those kind of vulnerabilities or exposure. So, like everything in IT, start small, determine the use cases, learn from those experiences, and then you can start to roll it out more pervasively across the organization.
Well, Brian, thank you so much for coming on, breaking into cybersecurity leadership and talking about the role of AI in strengthening our cybersecurity environment.
My pleasure. I really enjoyed it, and I hope everyone has a great weekend.